At the foot of Jinshan, it has transformed into a vast expanse of land, with surging waves and murky waters raging. Fahai Yan said, "My disciple has committed heinous crimes that are unforgivable, and I am willing to fall into the abyss of hell. However, the waters and mountains are overflowing, and there are countless unjust souls. Throughout my life, I have practiced Buddhism, but now I have almost become a fierce demon. I am willing to use my entire body of magical power to retreat from floods and restore peace to the world." Flood recedes, the primordial spirit of Fahai has completely dissipated in the human world, and his physical body has also turned into gold powder with the wind, scattered in the river. Unexpectedly, the passage of Fahai became Tang Sanzang, who had just set foot on the westbound road. "Go to Lingshan here, see the good and evil in people's hearts, see the chaotic dance of demons, and also see the private relationship between immortals and Buddhas. This goes to Lingshan. Punishing evil and promoting good, subduing demons and eliminating demons, slaying karma rather than killing life, to go to Lingshan, to gain the true feelings of the master and disciple, to gain insight, and to attain the emptiness of the mortal spirit. Go to Lingshan and ask what is the true scripture, who is the true Buddha, and who is the one who crosses the world." Keywords of the novel. Fahai crossing Tang Sanzang without pop-ups, Fahai crossing Tang Sanzang TXT complete collection download, Fahai crossing Tang Sanzang latest chapter reading. Chapter 1. Star, is this different from what you said? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1 Star, is this different from what you said? At the foot of Jinshan, it has transformed into a vast expanse of land, with surging waves and murky waters raging. Looking around, there are floating corpses everywhere, many of whom are monks from Jinshan Temple. Fahai held a baby in his arms, independent of a reef, and looked at the shadow of the Buddha in the sky. His originally fierce face showed a hint of regret. But after a moment, his expression became even more resolute. Fahai and the Buddha's shadow on the horizon stared at each other for a long time before slowly speaking, "My disciple has committed heinous crimes that are unforgivable. I am willing to fall into the abyss of hell. Amitabha Buddha." After reciting the Buddha's name, Fahai used local materials and pieced together a small boat from the remnants left by Jinshan Temple. He placed the baby in his arms and said to the Buddha's phantom in the sky, "However, the water is flooding Jinshan, and there are countless vengeful souls. My disciples have been practicing Buddhism for a lifetime, but now they have almost become ferocious demons. I am willing to use my entire body of magic to overcome floods and restore peace to the world." After speaking, he took off his robe and draped it over the baby's body. He then put his golden bowl into the small boat and gently pushed it, Prajnaparamita Buddhas, universal sentient beings. The body of punishment for sins will forever fall into hell. I hold a curse now, to calm the flood and disperse it. Fighting against the blue and white snake, Fahai's magical power has almost dried up. This time, he uses his original source, the primordial spirit comes out of his body, and transforms his lifelong Buddhist teachings into supreme magical power, shining with golden light and shining on the human world. As the flood receded, a golden wheel appeared behind Fahai's head, with rainbow lights shining brightly above it. The corners of Fahai's lips were slightly open, like the wonderful voice of the great Buddha. The creatures who had died in the flood were surpassed by them one by one, not only humans, but also innocent spirits who died. And the sins and black energy on countless unjust souls are all intertwined with the divine soul of Fahai, with an unpredictable darkness. The Buddha's shadow at the edge of the sky finally took action, pinching a few Dharma formulas with his fingertips. A mysterious aura flowed into the golden wool behind the sea of Dharma, and the karmic barrier seemed to be about to dissipate in an instant. The Buddha's nature on the sea of Dharma became increasingly strong, and the primordial spirit gradually condensed into relics, seeming to have the image of becoming a Buddha on the ground. Seeing that Fahai was about to achieve the right result, he saw his anger and opened his eyes to look directly at the Buddha, saying, "How can a person like me, who is forever fallen and boundless, become a Buddha?" As soon as he finished speaking, he reached out a hand and directly crushed the relic that was about to be fully formed. Boom! The primordial spirit of Fahai has completely dissipated in the human world, and his physical body has also turned into gold powder with the wind, scattered in the river. The Buddha's shadow on the horizon finally changed, as if in a moment of shock. Then the Buddha chanted to the sky, Amitabha Buddha. As the words fell, there were golden lotus flowers scattered all over the place. A golden lotus carrying a dead soul went together to the western paradise. Fahai looked at the familiar yet unfamiliar full moon in the sky and gradually turned his gaze to the west. It has been almost an hour since I woke up or recovered, and the shuttle and transformation between the two realms, even for Fahai, is not so easy to accept. And the current situation seems to be a case of using one's body to revive one's soul. It's strange to say that even though it's the body of Master Sanzang, it feels like one with oneself, and the fusion of the two divine souls is seamless, truly miraculous. He naturally knew the name of Master Sanzang, but unfortunately he had not been to Lingshan and had not seen this master before. The journey of Sanzang to the west created a prosperous era of Buddhism. He is a legendary figure, even in Lingshan, with a revered status. He never imagined that he would have such an intersection with Jinshan Gongda Buddha. Is it possible that there is another cause and effect between oneself and Master Sanzang, or is it a reincarnation cycle? Fahai slightly restrained his mind, and now he was caught by the monster. The accompanying servants had already hosted a feast for the mountain demons, while the more delicate and tender Sanzang mage was left to the end. The group of demons jokingly heard the sound of chewing in their ears. Before he crushed the relics, he had already reflected on his previous actions and realized that he was acting too recklessly. However, the scene before him still made Fahai's gaze more compassionate. Although Master Sanzang is a mortal body, the profound Buddhist teachings hidden within his body cannot be falsely achieved. There is a famous saying in the three realms. Love, hate, emotion, hatred, life and death, and even the 7 emotions and 6 desires can all be transformed into supreme power. But there is a prerequisite, which is one's own qualifications and potential, which determines the upper limit of mana. Before the Fahai Sangong, it was based on this that the entire body of Buddhism was transformed into the power of water governance. Upon careful consideration, this power contains love for all beings in the 3 realms, guilt for innocent and lifeless beings, confusion and jealousy towards Bai Suzhen's cultivation, and also has its own obsession with becoming a Buddha. Coincidentally, both Sanzang Dharma Master and Fahai Zen Master are leaders in the 3 realms. Fahai himself is a mortal who has practiced Arhat's divine power for more than 20 years, and is better than a 1,000-year-old monster. Becoming a Buddha was originally the long-standing wish of the Dharma Sea. To achieve this, one should cultivate Buddhism and eliminate demons and demons. However, who knew that one thought of becoming a demon would lead one astray? The self, who was supposed to fall into the abyss of hell, almost became a Buddha due to unforeseen circumstances. The aloof Fahai believed that the fruit he had obtained was not in the right position. At that time, he was a bit overwhelmed and his expression was excited. He crushed the relic and thought about it, but he still had some remorse. However, fate played tricks on people. I thought I would lose my soul, but I didn't expect such an encounter. It can be said that fate is immense. Fahai asked himself that he would never be inferior to the Arhat in Lingshan, either in the realm of Buddhism or in the depth of his power. He was the famous 18 Arhat. Except for the Arhat who were exiled to Lingyin Temple, he did not care about anything else. Transforming profound Buddhist teachings into the power to subdue demons and eliminate demons is not a difficult task for Fahai, it just takes some time. The monsters did not take the monk with no binding power in their eyes, so much so that they found that when the Sanzang master woke up, no monsters came to take care of him. The gift and package he carried with him had long been lost somewhere, but instead were the 9-ring tin staff bestowed by Guanyin Bodhisattva, which had been held in the hands of the Sanzang master. After observing it carefully for a long time, Fahai felt a sense of admiration in his heart. My own wand, after being illuminated and rendered by the Buddhist teachings of the high-ranking monks of Jinshan Temple throughout history, is no longer an ordinary thing. However, compared to the 9-ring tin wand in front of me, it is still like clouds and mud, one above and one below. However, the 9-ring tin stick in hand is still under lockdown and cannot reveal its true spiritual power. Otherwise, how can these few little demons get close to Master Sanzang? For a high monk like Fahai, cultivating magical tools is a matter of easy mastery, even easier than restoring his mana. Moreover, this is already a sacred artifact of Buddhism, and all that Fahai needs to do is to inspire its characteristics through Buddhism. The sky is gradually turning white. The little demons were full of wine and food, and stood up one by one to bid farewell to each other. Fahai, who had been accumulating strength all along, frowned tightly together. This was not right, it was strange. At this moment, the group of demons were preparing to leave, as if they had never seen themselves before. Fahai carefully recalled the memory of Rongguan and then locked his gaze on the bear demon. Not all can be used, eat the second and leave the first. It seems that it was the words of the bear demon before the banquet that allowed Master Sanzang to escape by chance. Moreover, during the feast of the group of demons, this demon was only accompanied by wine and some fruits and vegetables. It seemed like the residue was in a mess, but it did not seem to have eaten anyone. It is truly strange that monsters would turn a blind eye to the food that reaches their mouths. It doesn't seem so unusual to think of the spider spirit who is devoted to practicing Buddhism and the white snake and green snake who yearns for immortality. Stop. Fahai stood up and stopped the group of demons alone. Hidden in mid-air, Tai Bai Jinshan suddenly heard a scolding from Master Sanzang and quickly sat up straight from the clouds, looking down. Although Master Sanzang did not follow the script to sleep until the group of demons dispersed before waking up, Tai Bai Jinshan realized that this might not necessarily be a bad thing for Master Sanzang and did not intervene much. Although this monk has profound Buddhist teachings, he is still too naive. Now that he has witnessed this feast of demons and monsters with his own eyes, if he is timid and afraid, he can turn back. If his mind is firm, he should be fearless and fearless. Of course, all the scripture seekers from the first 9 generations have successfully passed this level. In this life, how dare he stop the path of the group of demons? Master Sanzang has just emerged from the realm of the Tang dynasty. Today, he is on duty to take care of him. According to the script tailored for Elder Tang, the first difficulty on the journey to obtain scriptures is appetizers. These little demons will eat the followers he brings, allowing Elder Tang to see the difficulty of obtaining scriptures in the western heaven, and then the curtain can be closed. Tai Bai Jinshan secretly thought to himself, I was really too careless. Fortunately, these little demons have low magical power, and everything is still under control. When Tai Bai Jinshan looked at Master Sanzang, his heart was once again shocked. The originally gentle and timid Sanzang master seemed to have been replaced by a different person. In the fleeting golden light, he suppressed the intimidating Buddha's aura, which made Tai Bai Jinshan couldn't help but sigh. It was truly the reincarnation of the golden cicada, and after the 10th reincarnation, he still had such a powerful presence. This group of rural monsters have never seen much of the world, and coupled with the fleeting supernatural aura on Master Sanzang's body, they have no idea what kind of existence this great monk is in front of them. General Yin, who was in the middle, had a set of fangs on the outside, a steel beard with sparse flesh, and sharp claws like frost. He was prepared to give this ignorant and unscrupulous great monk a good lesson. It was not enough to spare his life to be so reckless. The majestic and ferocious Xiong Shanjun and the sharp and majestic Tetsushi stood on either side of General Yin, with 3 demons and 6 eyes fixed on Master Sanzang. Suddenly, a demonic wind howled in the mountains and black clouds filled the air. However, Xiong Shanjuan's eyes showed a hint of confusion as he occasionally looked up into the sky and said to himself, Xingjuan, this is different from what you said. Come down and see what's going on. Wuna bald donkey, Grandpa happened to not have enough to eat. General Yin is a cannibal tiger, with a foul and bloody aura when he opens his mouth. His sharp claws sparkle with cold light, piercing into the heart of Elder Tang. It's not that he didn't give Xiong Shanjun face, it's really that this monk is seeking his own death. Xiong Shan instinctively wanted to intervene, but he still took a step slower. The Nyojing Tachushi on the side looked like he was watching a good show. He had been envious of this monk for a long time, and neither of them could enjoy it enough. Moreover, there was a group of little demons sharing the food. However, due to Xiong Shanjuan's words, it was difficult to refute. Now, this delicate and tender monk is about to become a dish on the plate. Te Chusher pulled out 2 sharp knives, which were the demonic tools he had refined after his cow horns fell off, eager to try. Amitabha Buddha. After a Buddhist chant, Fahai lifted the 9-ring tin staff in his hand. P.S. A new book is on the road, seeking to follow up. Follow-up determines the life and death of a book. Raising a book is easy to kill, brothers. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Why didn't demons come to eat me along the way? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. Why didn't demons come to eat me along the way? A demon is a demon. Like Bai Suzhen and others, they are ultimately a minority. Can someone like Bai Suzhen, who has already turned into a human, still be called a demon? Putting these thoughts aside for now, facing the cannibalistic demon, only Vajra's angry eyes are the compassionate aspect in Fahai. Just a flower cat, how dare to punish in front of the poor monk. Fahai didn't even look at him in the eye. The 9-ring tin rod, which seemed to have been lightly lifted in the hand of Master Sanzang, suddenly swung down. General Yin, who seems to have the power of Mount Tai and was originally a ferocious tiger, stagnated for a moment in midair. Bang! The 9-ring tin stick hit General Yin's head heavily. Roar! General Yin was directly knocked out of his original shape with a staff, like a white-haired bug with hanging eyes. His body was huge, like a small mountain, with compact fur and well-patterned patterns. If he peeled off the tiger skin, he would definitely sell it for a good price. The roar was accompanied by a fishy wind, and its voice had already trembled. Evil beast! Fahai kicked his foot and drew a circle with the 9-ring tin staff. With a loud explosion in his mouth, the second staff had already fallen. Amitabha Buddha. General Yin's body twitched a few times on the ground, then there was no more sound. The Sodat called King Kong is also compassionate, not allowing General Yin to endure too much pain and torment. Fahai pinched the Dharma formula with his fingertips, and restrained General Yin's detached soul in place. He muttered something in his mouth. At this moment, Jin Wu set sail, shining in the 3 realms, and General Yin was transformed by Fahai, ending his evil life. Everything happened too quickly. 1 second ago, Tetsushi was still pondering whether to braise or steam the monk. The next second, he had already revealed his true form and was about to flee if he scattered his ox hooves. Who is this Arhat? Are you still using WeChat to conduct private visits or fishing law enforcement? Did you commit the precept of killing, Master? Is it still possible to beg for mercy now? Don't let the wicked animals leave. Come on. With a crisp sound, the special clerk only felt his waist was heavy, then his front hooves were soft, and he knelt on the ground. The 2 legs in front of him were broken, as if he was carrying Mount Taishan on his back, which made him unable to move at all. Fahai stepped on the body of Tetsushi, with the 9-ring tin staff in front of the group of demons, and his lips slightly parted. Amitabha Buddha. The sound of Buddha chanting exploded in the ears of the group of demons. Where do the little demons care about these things? If you really stay and don't move, wouldn't it be a small loss of life? Suddenly, the birds and beasts scattered, and Fahai looked at the scattered little demons with a slight frown. If these little demons were to scatter in the human world, it was unknown how many mortals would suffer. My Buddha is merciful, we need to surpass them all. As is well known, transcendence is merit, not killing. After Fahai used his staff to overpower Tetsushi, he glared at Xiong Jun with anger. After all, the little demon had limited magical power, and this old bear was quite difficult to see through. At this moment, he saw auspicious clouds growing in the sky, and an old Taoist path descended from the clouds and stopped in front of him. Who is this? I have never seen it before, but judging from its appearance and charm, Fahai also had some speculations in his heart. Evil obstacles. Tai Bai Jinshan stood in front of Fahai, waved his hand lightly, and brushed the dust on Xiong Jun's head. Xiong Jun rolled on the spot, revealing his true form. Urban mountain god, who is not dedicated to his duties but associates with demons and demons, willingly falls. Where is the strong man? As soon as Tai Bai Jinxing finished speaking, 2 yellow scarves appeared with dozens of heavenly soldiers. The yellow scarves captured Xiong Jun on the spot, while the heavenly soldiers went to eliminate the scattered little demons. After finishing these arrangements, Tai Bai Jinxing smiled at the monk Sanzang beside him and said, I don't know where the monk is practicing, why are you here? I can't watch any more. If I wait any longer, I will be surpassed by this Sanzang mage. I'm afraid the script I prepared earlier may not be useful, so I need to adapt according to the situation. After thinking for a moment, Fahai said, I became a monk at Jinshan Temple and was ordered by the Tang King to go to the Western Heaven to worship Buddha and seek scriptures. Speaking of this, Fahai seemed to have thought of something, intending to get up and return, and he didn't want to entangle himself with the people of the heavenly court. Upon seeing this, Tai Bai Jinxing's eyes also showed a hint of doubt and he hurriedly said, Where is the mage going? Where to go? Fahai was a great monk in later generations, not to mention the true scriptures obtained by Sanzang Master from the West. There are few Buddhist scriptures that he is not proficient in, let alone his own unique views on Buddhism. So, why go to the West? Just go directly to Jinshan Temple to open an altar and preach Buddhism. It is also fate that the place where Master Sanzang became a monk is also called Jinshan Temple, but unfortunately it is not the same temple. Along the way of Buddhism, the sea of Dharma is at odds with the mainstream of Lingshan. Perhaps it is precisely because of this that Lingshan's wise eyes cannot be wasted in the mundane world. Especially when it comes to the idea of putting down the butcher's knife and becoming a Buddha on the ground, I disagree the most. Otherwise, I wouldn't have crushed the relics of becoming a Buddha. Although it is an emotional move, it is not without reason. At this moment, the Eastern land is lacking profound Buddhist teachings. Isn't it just an opportunity? Thinking of this, Fahai prepared to return to Chang'an. The Buddha lies in the heavens, the earth, and all sentient beings, but should not only be in the western sky. Who said there is no profound Buddhism in the world except for the Western Heaven Spirit Mountain? But after taking a few steps, I suddenly realized that it was not appropriate. Master Sanzang went to the Western Heaven to retrieve scriptures, seemingly under the command of the Tang King, but actually had a great responsibility. However, his knowledge of the journey to the West was not detailed. If he made repeated actions at this moment, he might cause trouble. If you are annoyed by the Bodhisattvas and Buddhas in Lingshan, not to mention spreading Buddhism, you may not have a place to stand in the 3 realms. Although Fahai is arrogant, he does not believe that he can oppose Lingshan. This Star Lord, who leads the heavenly soldier, is probably also the one who secretly protects Master Sanzang. Considering Xiong Jun, who was captured by the heavenly soldier, he secretly pondered in his heart, whether it was these 90.980.1 difficulties. Is it really like rumors, mostly acting on the spot? Upon hearing this, Fahai turned around and said, I don't know where the horse and luggage are scattered. I'm about to search along the way. I haven't consulted the Immortal's title yet. Poor Taoist Li Chang'an. It turns out to be Tai Bai Jun, I'm so polite. Both sides had some reservations in their hearts and didn't say much. After all, Tianting and Lingshan are not the same system, and now they are roughly in a competitive relationship in cooperation. Although the changes in Sanzang Mage make him feel strange, what does this have to do with Tianting? My task was to ensure that Tang Monk passed through this mountain safely. Although the process was a bit bumpy, the task was still successfully completed. As for the rest, even if there are any tricks involved, I have to wait until I go back and report to the Jade Emperor, so that they can have a headache. Just observing the actions of this monk, I don't know who the 9,981 difficulties arranged along the way were. Fahai looked at the back of Tai by Jinshan leading the heavenly army and general back to the heavenly realm, but he was reflecting on his impulsive behavior just now. Although Master Sanzang is a high monk, he is still ordinary at present, which is very different from his image when he subdued demons and demons just now. It would be best if no one asked him, but if the gods and Buddhas in the heavenly court and Lingshan are to explore, he still needs to come up with a reason. Not asking about the white Venus does not mean that Guanyin Bodhisattva and Lingshan Buddhas can also turn a blind eye. Fahai found the white horse, put on his backpack, and led the horse into the mountains. Beyond the boundaries of the Tang dynasty, it is not entirely a matter of poverty and adversity. The cold and rustling rainforest wind makes the sound of murmuring streams flowing down the water. Fragrant and fragrant wild flowers bloom, dense clusters of scattered stones and thunder. Roaring deer and apes, teams of deer and muntjac. There is a lot of noise and the sound of birds, but it is quiet and quiet. Just, on this journey, why haven't demons come to eat me? New book on the road, seeking support, end of this chapter. Chapter 3. The Master has the power to subdue dragons and tigers. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. The Master has the power to subdue dragons and tigers. Fahai doesn't take the main road, but specifically selects secluded paths in deep mountains and wild forests. You horse, your foot strength is not as strong as that of a poor monk. Fahai led the horse and watched as it gasped for breath and struggled to lift its hooves. He couldn't help but laugh. How could you carry the poor monk to the west like this? This white horse was gifted by the king of Tang, and in common customs, it can also be called a 1,000-mile steed. But following Master Sanzang into the world of demons and immortals, I'm afraid I'll lose my life in vain. Go back. Fahai took off his salute and patted White Horse's buttocks, saying, if you encounter a monster with high magic power, I'm afraid I won't be able to protect you. Ma-er was quite spiritual, as if he understood Fahai's words. He lightly rubbed around Fahai a few times, exhaled a few breaths, turned back 3 times, and headed towards the Tang dynasty realm. Between the mountains, there is no human habitation. I casually took some wild fruits to satisfy my hunger and quench my thirst. Along the way, it was also considered a practice, which not only exercised my willpower but also honed my body. The body of Master Sanzang may seem weak, but in fact, it is not. The eminent monk, who is equipped with Buddhism, can use the spirit of heaven and earth to infuse his body, and hide his essence. But he doesn't know how to mobilize it. Now Fahai is using it for nothing but to cultivate a Arhat golden body. Fahai is not a person of arrogance. Upon closer examination, it can be seen that a millennium-old demon like Baisuzhan has such a way of doing things, and it is quite difficult to deal with them on her own. If she encounters those 1,000-year-old demon kings, relying solely on her current, ordinary, body, she may face more misfortune than good. Fortunately, Avalokitesvara Bodhisattva bestowed upon him 2 sacred Buddhist artifacts. A brocade robe and a 9-ring tin staff. Otherwise, Fahai had to find a place to cultivate a body of heavenly power before he would be willing to set out. This world is full of spiritual energy, and Fahai consciously cultivates for thousands of miles in a day, achieving twice the result with half the effort. As I was walking, a gust of wind suddenly struck, and I saw a fierce tiger standing on a mountain stone in front of me. However, behind me, several long snakes twisted out from nowhere, with no way out on either side. Along the way, there were many poisonous insects and beasts, and Fahai was fearless. However, he couldn't help but wonder in his heart. How can a person like Master Sanzang walk on such a dangerous road? Not to mention various disasters along the way. As he was pondering whether to show weakness and see if he could lure out the hidden immortals on both sides, the fierce tiger was already approaching. What a wicked beast! The General Yin from the previous mountain is not a match for Fahai, let alone a wild tiger in this mountain. Before the mountain lord could even unleash his ferocity, he felt his waist sink and his lower abdomen tighten. Looking at Fahai, who had been riding on it at some point, he slapped him in the face and said, "I'm just lacking some foot strength. If this big pussy continues, even if it is the king of beasts, it will turn into a delicate and cute pet." Master, what a handsome skill. At this moment, I saw a hunter wandering in the forest with a steel fork in his hand, and in 2 or 3 strokes, he cooked several long snakes. Upon closer inspection, Fahai exclaimed inwardly. This person is truly extraordinary, seemingly ordinary, but his immortal aura lingers on his body, yet he doesn't know exactly where he is sacred. This person used the method of concealment at that time, not as unobstructed as Tai by Jinshan. Now that his magical power is no longer at its peak, his background cannot be seen for a moment. I think it should be the savior of this calamity on the journey to the west, right? The hunter picked up the long snake and walked up, curious and asking, "Why is the master walking alone between these mountains?" Amitabha Buddha. Fahai pressed the big cat's neck with his Zen stick in one hand, and held a Buddhist salute in the other. Poor monk Tang Sanzang, on the order of the Tang king, went to the west to seek the true scriptures. I have not yet thanked the benefactor for his help. The master has the power to subdue dragons and tigers. How can snakes and insects in the mountains and wild harm the master? The hunter smiled and said, "I was originally a hunter in this mountain, surnamed Lu Buqin, and nicknamed Jinshan Taibao. Now that I met the master, it was also fate. Now that it's late to see the sky, why don't you take a break in your humble abode and set off tomorrow? I'm sorry to bother you. Having a place to rest is naturally better than sleeping outdoors." After all, it was still under the rule of the Tang dynasty, and it was not as easy to seduce some righteous spirits. Although they are human, they also hide dragons and crouching tigers. Some people may appear to be just civil servants on the surface, but secretly they also work as dragon slayer executioners. The little demon in the previous mountain was probably arranged in advance, and Lu Buqin was probably also aware of it. Otherwise, he wouldn't have let those mountain fairies stay until now. Riding a big cat all the way, following Lu Buqin through a winding mountain slope, I came across a mountain villa. The so-called towering ancient tree, full of barren vines on the road. The wind and dust of 10,000 valleys are cold, and the weather of 1,000 cliffs is peculiar. A trail of wild flowers envelopes the body, and several bamboo poles are lush and green. Kaomenlu, fenced courtyard, can be described and painted, stone slab bridge, white soil wall, true joy and rarity. Autumn looks desolate, refreshing and aloof. Yellow leaves fall by the roadside, and white clouds drift on the mountain. The birds in the sparse forest are noisy, while the fine dogs outside the village are howling. It is truly an extraordinary place. Fahai sighed inwardly, the Tang dynasty truly harbors hidden dragons and crouching tigers. Where are you, little ones? The doorkeeper let out a shout, and 3 or 4 servants walked out, all of whom were strange and evil-looking, displaying a wild aura. At this moment, everyone was curious and admiring the elder riding a big tiger. Fahai flipped over and fell into the tiger, silently reciting a few Dharma formulas. Then, a Buddhist handprint was pressed against his chamber, and the cat became more gentle and obedient after being subdued. He went and lay on the side of the mountain villa wall. Can there be women, children, and children of all ages in a strong warrior's family? Fahai asked further. There are elderly women in the classroom, as well as children playing. In this way, I won't be careless. Fahai inserted the 9-ring tin rod into the side of the big cat and said, "Could you please borrow a sturdy rope?" "Go." Tai Bao gave a glance to the servant in front of him. The servant quickly walked to the villa and shouted while running, "An elder has captured a colorful tiger." Instantly causing the villa to shake, some fearless little dolls ran out to watch, causing their mothers to worry and scold. "It's not a big deal," Lu Buqin smiled and said, "I often go to the mountains to hunt tigers and eat them, but the ones I used to bring are all dead tigers." Now that they see the truth, it can also boost their courage. Lu Buqin held a banquet, and because his family did not eat meat or fish, Lu's mother personally made some vegetarian meals to entertain the high monks. Seeing that several little dolls were clever and cute, Fahai did not hesitate to pass on a set of Arhat tiger subduing fist, which attracted another round of thanks. It's night. Fahai and Lu Buqin sat opposite each other in the courtyard of the villa. Master Wudao's 10th reincarnation was considered immortal, but he never expected to awaken his true spirit. Suddenly, a silver light fell into Lu Buqin's body, and he saw him bow his hand and smile, saying, "Master, long time no see." Lu Buqin's words fell, but he underwent a transformation, transforming his appearance. He was dressed in white and held a folding fan in his hand, exuding an extraordinary temperament. Fahai paused for a moment and became wary, saying, "Who exactly is your excellency?" He really didn't know this person, and his heart slowly began to ponder. Listening to his words, it was probably an old acquaintance of Jinshan 1,000 years ago, but he didn't know whether it was an enemy or a friend. Lu Buqin seemed somewhat surprised upon hearing this and said in a deep voice, "Since master has such cultivation, why pretend not to know his old friends? Jinshan, do you really not know Yang Jian and Yang Erlang?" Hiss, although he doesn't know anyone, the title of Yang Jian and Yang Erlang is probably the only family in the 3 realms, with no other branch. How can one not know? Could it be that 1,000 years ago, Jinshan had a past with this Yang Erlang? "Are you the Erlang Jinjuan from Guanjiangku?" Knowing it well, he asked if it belonged to him, but before waiting for a response, he continued, "I am a poor monk with the common surname Chen. I have been a monk in Jinshan temple since I was young, and I am called Jianglu monk. Later, I took the Dharma name Xuanzang. Later, I was given the name Tang Sanzang by the king of Tang, but since then, there has been no name for Jinshan. Now, I have been ordered by the king of Tang to go to the west to seek the true scriptures. Has Jinjuan mistaken someone?" End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Eating the meat of a poor monk. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. Eating the meat of a poor monk is okay. Seeing Jean Cicada's tough mouth, Yang Jian immediately revealed his signature heavenly eye, with a silver-blue radiance enveloping the sea of Dharma. At first glance, the golden light shone and the Buddha's light overflowed, especially the hidden Buddha's fierce aura. Apart from Jean Cicada, there was no second person in the entire Lingshan. After the two of them looked at each other for a moment, Yang Jian smiled helplessly and said, "Forget it, since the master refuses to recognize each other, Yang Jian doesn't insist on it. He just thinks that meeting old friends can bring back memories." After a moment of contemplation, Fahai spoke again and said, "Although I am not an old friend, can I not be considered a new friend? Besides, my name is just a false title used by people. Why bother with me? Or maybe what I have in mind is just the 3 characters Jinshan. Ha ha ha, it was Yang Jian's appearance. Yang Jian laughed a few times and said, "As the master said, Jinshan is not only an old friend, but Yang Jian has always been concerned about it. But now he cannot ignore new friends. Erlang Jinjuan is a bold and straightforward person." Just a few words of conversation at the beginning, Fahai felt a sense of regret for meeting too late. One was the protector of the Xianmen sect, and the other was a Buddhist monk. Although they came from different sects, they had a moment of mutual affection. As the conversation rose, Fahai couldn't help but ask, "This Lu Buqin? He is a named disciple of Yang Jian, guarding the border of the 9 provinces here to prevent evil spirits from invading. Due to feeling the master's mystery, he finally surrendered his spirit and met him through his body. Jinshan has great supernatural powers. He. This compliment was naturally commendable by Yang Jian, but when it came to supernatural powers, he suddenly smiled and said, "Master, you may have to go through many difficulties and obstacles all the way west, and the land of barbarians is full of demons and monsters. Just turn it one by one, so that the other generation can appreciate the profoundness of Buddhism." Yang Jian thought for a moment and said, "If the master shows all his cultivation, I'm afraid those demons wouldn't dare to approach him." To be honest, Yang Jian has led the Meishan brothers to hunt around and slay demons and eliminate them in recent years. Those foolish demons have been dealt with 7, 8, and 8 times, and the rest are all old and cunning people. They were afraid to hear of the master's reputation, so they hid out early. Upon hearing these words, Fahai also fell into contemplation. It must be said that Erlang Jinjuan's words do make sense. While contemplating it, I suddenly smelled the aroma of meat in the kitchen, which was a blessing to my soul. I said, "So, I have a secret that I have to tell you." "Oh." Yang Jian leaned closer. "According to Bodhisattva, eating the flesh of a poor monk can lead to immortality in immortality, and one can become a Buddha." Amazing. True hunters often appear in the form of prey. With the words of Fahai, Yang Jian pushed the window to look at the moon and opened a Xintiandi. It still needs to be a golden cicada. Ordinary people in Buddhism are like those carved from the same mold, with an extremely uninteresting appearance. How could they catch young Erlang's eye? The next day, Yang Jian had arrived in his true form, but he still looked like Lu Buqin, escorting Fahai out of the mountains along the way. The original intention was to ask 2 servants to carry their luggage and see them off all the way, but they were politely refused by Fahai. In the end, they picked up some clothes and provisions, obtained the customs clearance document, and then went to battle lightly. The mountain cat that was tamed yesterday was enlightened by Yang Jian and left in the villa mainly because a Tang monk riding a tiger was too flamboyant, which was not conducive to fishing. Nowadays, Master Fahai has restrained his magical power, like a mortal, and his whole body is filled with the fragrance of immortality. Fahai was afraid that he wouldn't catch big fish. After all, there were many monsters who had already achieved immortality, and their idea was to become immortals. Just like Bai Suzhen, how could she have suffered such a calamity if she had not longed to be ranked in the immortal class? It's strange to say that when I wanted to become a Buddha, I almost became a demon. In the end, I lost all my cultivation and even crushed the Buddha's relics with my own hands. Bai Suzhen wanted to become an immortal, but in the end, she got married and had children, but turned into a human. Su Xian was greedy for the mortal world and only wanted to grow old together with Bai Suzhen. Unexpectedly, he was shaved off and became a monk. Is this just personal greed, the cause and effect of the world? What can we do? Now that I have regained my life, I also need to carefully consider what I am seeking. After walking for half a day, the 2 of them saw a big mountain opposite them. It was really high and connected to the blue sky, and Chui Wei was steep. Yang Jian spoke up, "This place is called the 2 Realms Mountain. If you go further, you will reach the territory of the Tatars, and you will be crossing the border." Fahai glanced at it and smiled. "This mountain is quite interesting, like 5 fingers. Is it possible that this is Wuji Mountain? Is Qi Tian, the great sage who has not yet completed the battle to defeat the Buddha, being suppressed here?" Yang Erlang, who turned into Lu Buqin on the side, smiled and said, "The old name of this place was exactly Wuji Mountain, also known as Wuxing Mountain. It was only when the Tang king conquered the west to establish the territory that this place was renamed Liangjie Mountain. At the foot of this mountain lies a natural stone monkey, who is truly extraordinary. He has learned some skills from somewhere and has been invited by the heavenly court. He is known as the great sage of Qi Tian. However, due to the fact that the Peach Blossom Society did not invite him by the heavenly court, he became angry and rebelled against the heavenly court. Since then, the heavenly palace has been punished because of his poor skills. Young Jian was explaining to Master Sanzang, but he heard the monkey at the foot of the mountain shout loudly, "Yang Erlang, who turned into a hunter, must not make fun of your great sage grandfather. The Peach Blossom Society did not invite me back then, so did it invite you? You didn't help my grandson, but instead dealt with me for the heavenly court. You have a stinky mouth, and when you speak insulting words. I will teach you a lesson for my late mother. What does it have to do with the heavenly court?" Young Jian saw through the change and stopped pretending, revealing his figure directly. These two were quite at odds, but instead left Tang Sanzang aside and started to argue. "Qi Sha Wu," Sun Wukong said angrily as he was pinned down at the foot of the mountain and unable to move. "If it weren't for the sneak attacks of the roaring heavenly dog and the supreme old lord, how could I have been captured by your little holy place? You monkey, you have many excuses. Even if there are no roaring dogs or old masters, I will capture you. The flagpole behind the small temple cannot hide your tail. How can you compete with someone? Master, hurry up and rescue me. My grandson is going to fight against this tusk for 300 rounds. Sun Wukong looked at Master Sanzang with a pair of divine eyes. "So you can only hold on to 3 lilies. I'll catch him at 2 lilies and see if you're convinced." Young Jian always looks like a gentle young master, but when he sees this unreasonable monkey, he can always be ignited by an unnamed fire. Fahai looked closely at the famous great sage of Qi Tian. Although he felt a bit disheveled under the mountain, his golden eyes were exceptionally bright and dazzling. He knew that the great sage was calling him. This time, Yang Jian walked in front of him and tidied up the weeds around him neatly. He smiled and said, "Who are you calling master?" He asked lightly, but he didn't know that Sun Wukong was also muttering in his heart. His fiery eyes and golden eyes were good at discerning, and it was not difficult to see that this elder Zen master had profound cultivation. Although he couldn't compare to him and young Erlang, walking in the world was already enough. Which fairy dared to come and eat him? He muttered to himself, his eyes rolled, and he asked with a smile, "Are you the great king of the eastern land who sent him to the western heaven to retrieve scriptures?" Fahai nodded and said, "Exactly." The monkey was overjoyed and said, "Master must have known the origin of my grandson from young Erlang. He was arrogant and looked down upon others, so he made a mistake and was punished here. The former had a Avalokitesvara Bodhisattva who received the Buddha's will and went to the eastern earth to search for a person to retrieve the scriptures. I taught the great master to save me, and she advised me not to commit any wrongdoing, to follow the Buddha's teachings, to protect the person to the west, and to pay homage to the Buddha. After achieving success, there will be benefits. Therefore, I am vigilant day and night, afraid in the morning and evening, and only wait for Master to save me and escape." End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Master, the disciples are coming out. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. Master, the disciples are coming out. Just what? It's just Master Nguyen. I am just an ordinary monk who wants you to be protected by divine powers. Fahai held the monkey's hand and did not give him a chance to continue speaking. You have this kind heart and have received the teachings of Bodhisattva. I am willing to enter the sand gate. I should have saved you from poverty, but I have no axe or chisel. How can I save you from it? Monkeys only feel their arms sink. Is this called a mere monk? Seeing young Erlang's smiling expression, he thought to himself, Master has a lot of strength. Although my grandson was suppressed at the foot of the mountain, he was also temporarily suppressed by him. Since he speaks in such a way, is there anything else to consider in this? Putting aside many things for now, the most important thing for my grandson is to get out of poverty. Moreover, Master is a capable person, wouldn't it be much easier on this West Heaven road? Wukong followed the elder's words and said, You don't need to chisel with an axe, you don't need to chisel with an axe. Go up to the mountaintop and remove the golden characters that the Tathagata has pasted on the mountaintop. My grandson can come out on his own. Fahai looked up and saw that the mountain was extremely high and steep, making it difficult for ordinary people to climb. After a careful induction, one can also perceive that there seems to be a gaze peering around, full of spiritual mountain aura. The heart said, if we open the post on the mountaintop, we can release him. It is also reasonable for the Buddha to place someone here to guard. I will come as soon as I go. Please stay here for a moment. Watching Fahai hike up the mountain, Wukong waved to Yang Erlang and said, Yang Erlang. Yang Jian gave him a slanted glance. Jinjuan. Erlang Jinjuan. Sun Wukong immediately changed his mouth and smiled, Jinjuan, can you bring wine and meat? What are you trying to do? Who would carry these things with them? Wukong chuckled and said, my grandson has been trapped at the foot of this mountain for 500 to 600 years. He has been eating iron balls and copper juice all day. Although he has been lifted out of poverty, he is about to become a monk in the shaman. He may not be able to eat any meat or fish in the future. Your great sage has extraordinary abilities. If you want to drink and eat meat, who can stop you? The words were like this, but Yang Jian's heart inexplicably tightened. A rebellious figure like the great sage of Qi Tian may also be tamed now. It is inevitable to recall the scene when I once caused trouble in the heavenly palace, and suddenly there was a feeling of being a fallen person from the ends of the earth. Why bother making fun of Master Jinjuan? Wukong turned his head and looked at Master Sanzang, who was climbing the mountain, and whispered, this elder has profound Buddhist teachings. My grandson has accepted his help, so we must respect him a little more. I have heard many Buddhist precepts, so I cannot offend him in the future. If Master Jinjuan has them, let him drink them a lot first. If not, it will be just a matter of time. Sun Dashing, who is not afraid of the heavens and the earth, actually believes in the number of hits. Yang Erlang shook his robe and said, you are also interesting, you monkey splashing. You can't offend me in the future, but now you can offend me. Please wait a moment for someone to bring the wine. As soon as the words fell, they turned into a silver light that shone straight into the sky. Although the monkey has a foul mouth, it is still a good opponent. What kind of prestige was it in the 3 realms of Xiaoyao back then? Now let's take a pot of wine and see him off. How many people can there be in the 3 realms who can draw with Yang Erlang? It is truly lamentable that one person has become a scholar and the other has become their disciple. Yang Jian originally wanted to go to the Moon Palace to seek a pot of Guanhan immortal wine, but he was afraid that one day in the sky or 1 year underground would be at the wrong time. So he went to the 3 holy mothers of Mount Hua and bought a bottle of monkey wine, hoping to satisfy Sun Wukong's wishes. Fahai has already climbed halfway up the mountain. Although the mountain peak is steep, the elder's legs and feet are really agile. The great sage's heart is itchy and unbearable, but in fact, it's just a craving. Seeing that Yang Erlang couldn't go for a long time, he deliberately delayed for a while and looked up and shouted loudly, Master, did you see the post for his son there? Fahai replied, not yet. I'll hurry up and help you out of trouble as soon as possible. The footsteps were fast, and even some light body techniques were used. The seemingly steep mountain wall felt like walking flat for a moment. Sun Dashing. This elder is actually a sincere person. It's just that. In fact, the words of the great sage and Yang Erlang were not deliberately concealed, and Fahai was not a true monk, so they all listened to me. I only felt that the great sage of Qi Tian in the past, who defeated the Buddha in the future, was also a wonderful person. Wonderful monkey. As for wanting to eat and drink some meat and drink to satisfy his craving before entering the salon, Fahai also had a heart to help him, but he couldn't make it too easy for him. Thinking about this, Fahai suddenly had a clear understanding in his heart. Could it be that Master Sanzang was also like this when he was taking scriptures from the Western Heaven? The scripture volume is located in the Western Heaven. If Buddhism wants to pass on the scriptures, it is necessary to send its disciples to pass on the scriptures. Why should Master Sanzang take the scriptures from the Western heaven? Fear is also a fear of not cherishing easily obtained scriptures. If the Sanzang master travels thousands of miles, traverses mountains and rivers, and has gone through countless hardships to obtain the true scriptures, they should be cherished as treasures. There is a great deal of knowledge involved in the transition between master and follower. If that's the case, it's hard to say whether Sanzang is in a hurry to retrieve the scriptures or whether Jinshan is tightly following him. Besides, the person who retrieved the scriptures is still the reincarnation of Jinshan, who is the second disciple of the Buddha's throne. Amitabha Buddha. Buddha. Is this the Buddha? From crushing the relics and cutting off the path to becoming a Buddha, Fahai seemed to have jumped out of his long-cherished wish to become a Buddha. At this moment, a doubt even arose in his heart: what exactly is Buddha? And why do I want to become a Buddha? Do we have to be Buddhas to cultivate sentient beings? Perhaps one can gain insights from this journey to the West, or at Jinshan, one can seek advice from the Buddha in person. It is precisely because Fahai, a Buddhist rebel who can allow female fairies to help him cultivate his composure, that such thoughts arise. If it were for individual monks, they might have already gone to the wall to ponder. The monkey's pair of fiery eyes and golden eyes had already seen young Jian's figure, and the elder almost stepped on the mountaintop and shouted from the foot of the mountain, "Master, the mountain road is steep and rugged. Please be careful and slow down. My disciple has been under pressure for 500 years, not short of this moment and a half." Upon hearing this, Fahai slowed down his steps and looked down. He saw that young Jian had already passed away and returned, and his heart had said that he had a divine ability. He truly lived up to his reputation as the god of war in the three realms. The monkey saw the elder stop and immediately laughed and said, "Master, look up and see the cover on the mountain and stone, which still says 'I'll coax you.'" Young Erlang couldn't help but not laugh. He didn't have much interaction with monkeys before, but he didn't expect to have many devilish hearts. Fahai knew that the great sage was procrastinating, but he didn't expose him. Instead, he followed his words and said, "I'll go take a look." Taking advantage of Fahai's turn to search for the Buddhist scriptures, the great sage waved to young Erlang and said, "Quick, fast. My grandson has already smelled the fragrance of wine. Thank you very much, thank you very much. Tun 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 tun, ha. I also had a wake-up call. You've ruined all the good wine." Young Erlang took out a plate of peanuts and placed them in front of the great sage. The great sage was overjoyed and put down the wine gourd, grabbed a handful at will, and gave it to his mouth. Fahai couldn't help but raise his mouth as he heard the commotion below. Seeing that he was eating and drinking almost enough, he stepped out onto the top of the mountain and saw 1,000 golden lights and auspicious signs. There was a large stone in all directions, with a cover attached to it, but it contained 6 golden characters. Om, Ma, Ni, Ba, Me, and Hum. This is not, "I coaxed you," it's clearly, "You coaxed me." Fahai's voice came down from the mountaintop, and the great sage happened to finish a pot of wine. At this moment, he didn't know that his master had intended to fulfill it. Suddenly, his heart warmed, but he couldn't say anything more. He just chuckled foolishly and said, "Master, don't worry about who fooled you, just open the post and my grandson will come out." Fahai turned back and clasped his hands together, saying, "Amitabha Buddha." Just as I was about to come forward and open the post, I saw the post automatically fall from the rocks and hover in mid-air when there was no wind. I am Arhat being held in custody here. Now is the day when the Monkey King cannot be satisfied. I hereby hand in this letter and see the Tathagata again. The Arhat didn't show his figure, so he went to Jinshan with the seal. "Master, come down quickly. The disciples are coming out." End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Master, be careful, you are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Master, be careful. When Fahai descended to the bottom of the mountain, Jian bid farewell to his master and disciple and said, when mountains and rivers met, Jian sent the master to this place. Later, with the protection of the great sage, our journey to the west would be much smoother. Great sage, we can also be considered strangers. It is said that when we meet, we smile and forget our grudges. If there are any difficulties on the way, feel free to come to Guanjianku to find me. My grandson remembers that when you caught me and went to heaven, you sent someone outside the South Tianmen gate to shout and throw the Jade Emperor's reward into the stinking ditch. It seems that he looked at Yang Jian and repeatedly laughed, hey, hey, hey. It was my grandson who was blind and didn't know about the mountains. He bumped into Jinjuan and Jinjuan. Now there are a lot of adults who don't argue with my grandson. If my grandson eats your wine again, how can he be ungrateful? After escorting Shifu to get the scriptures successfully, he must go to Jinjuan's house to make amends in person. Then Jinjuan won't take my grandson, just drive out. But there's one thing you really have to do first. What's going on? Back then, my grandson was ambushed by the old lord's diamond circle, and he lost both verbally and emotionally. When my grandson goes to your mansion again, we need to truly distinguish ourselves. Everyone carried the big flower sedan chair, whether it was Sun Wukong or Yang Erlang, they both ate the soft rather than the hard. Now that they have met again, they are actually showing mutual respect. Ha ha ha, Yang Jian laughed and said, it's a deal. After dealing with the great sage, Yang Jian arched his hand towards Master Sanzang and said, Yang Jian is leaving now. I wish Master a smooth journey to the west. Yang Jian didn't stay much. He turned into a stream of light and left the Five Elements mountain. The great sage turned his head to look at his master and said, Master, please go further and see my son's divine power. Fahai walked east for a long time and heard the great sage shout, Master, it's almost time. You find a hidden place to hide, my grandson is coming out. Seeing Fahai leaning against a mountain and rock, the great sage let out a loud shout and heard another explosion, accompanied by the wild laughter of monkeys. The Five Elements mountain split into 4.5, and the so called mountain collapse and earth fissure were nothing more. Fahai exclaimed at the sight, truly worthy of being the great sage of Qi Tian. I saw the monkey doing a somersault in mid-air, and when it landed, it knelt down in front of the wizard. It was naked and covered in fluff, covered in weeds. Although it looked disheveled, it had a free-spirited spirit. Master. The great sage held on to Master Sanzang's thigh and wept with joy as he thought he had been helped out of the cage. Tears flashed in his eyes. Disciple, pay respects to Master. Quick, get up quickly. Fahai helped the great sage and exerted some force in his hand, but to his surprise, the great sage had even greater strength and made a few hard kowtows. After a moment of contemplation, Fahai spoke up and said, Since you have worshipped me as your teacher, you were originally intended to give you a Dharma name. But since you have the word Wukong, and have a strong sense of Zen, why don't I give you a mixed name? Good, good, please give me a name, Master. Even though I am a great saint who has achieved great cultivation, I still look forward to it. My name, Sun Wukong, was given by my mentor, but unfortunately, he no longer recognizes me as a naughty disciple. Thinking of this, my emotions surged again and I said to myself, I am really a naughty person. I caused such a big trouble in the heavenly palace, and my master expelled me from the sect. It was a foresight move. Otherwise, wouldn't it have implicated the sect and a group of senior brothers? This time, I also went out of the sect and joined the Sand Gate. The new master gave me a new pseudonym, which is to bid farewell to the past and start a new life. I just don't know what this master can teach me. If I can endure fasting, but if I still need to recite Buddhism, it's really difficult to be a monkey. You look like a leader, why not call yourself a traveler? Xing xing. Xing xing. He he he. The great sage crossed his hands and spun around in front of his chest, flipping a somersault in a realistic way and jokingly said, "Xingxing is good. Xingxing is good, so call it Sun Xingxing. Why don't you see Master's strength?" Wukong looked left and right, carrying his luggage on his back and asked curiously. "There was originally a horse, but I realized that demons were causing trouble along the way, so I released the horse. Master indeed has a compassionate heart." Wukong was greatly shocked and said to himself, "Is this how Buddhist monks act? Without horses, lacking foot strength?" Wukong rolled his eyes and said to himself, "I want to show my master what I can do." I pulled out a handful of monkey hair and blew it on the ground, saying, "Master, please take a look." As soon as the golden light flashed by, the monkey fur turned into a galloping horse and showed off to his master, saying, "Master, please get on the horse and see if it suits your wishes. Come, master. Give me your luggage, and I will help you get on the horse." Although it is light and simple, in fact, Fahai does not carry many bags. Fahai smiled and said, "It's hard for you to have the heart. As a teacher, I have taken one step at a time to go to the West, which is also my own cultivation. When I didn't meet you before, I also carried this salute alone. Isn't this road also like this?" "Master, master, that's because the disciples were not here before. Now that we have disciples, how can we strain master?" Seeing that master didn't mount the horse and the great sage didn't demand anything, he casually put his luggage on the horse's back. Seeing master's eyes, he instinctively explained, "Master, it's not that disciples don't carry it, but who knows there are any demons and monsters along the way. If we encounter any danger, my grandson must take action to protect master at any time." The great sage seemed to say hi, or perhaps due to over 500 years of loneliness, his words couldn't stop. "Master, if I had to tell you, you don't need to bring these gifts, so I had my disciples flip over the Lingshan mountain with just one somersault on your back. Coincidentally, it was 108,000 miles. Fahai never expected that this great sage would still be a talkative person, and as soon as he spoke, it seemed like a river hanging in the air, making it hard to listen. However, it doesn't sound boring, but rather quite interesting. Thinking of my previous dull and boring life, which only gained a bit of color when I met the two green and white snakes, I couldn't help but joke, if that's the case, maybe the Buddha wants to suppress us, the master, and the disciple together at the foot of the Five Elements mountain for another 500 years. De Sheng was originally talking nonsense, but to his surprise, his master could also joke with him. He felt a bit relieved in his heart, not a rigid elder. The journey to the West shouldn't be too boring. As for the fact that his master's magical power is not bad, the great sage also takes it for granted. If he were truly an ordinary monk, how could he travel these 108,000 miles? Wukong had a sharp mind and knew that walking a few steps was not a big deal based on his master's cultivation. However, upon closer inspection, he realized that his master relied solely on his physical strength and did not mobilize any magical power. He was quite puzzled. However, considering what his master had said before, he was not good at asking for details and should only be regarded as a Buddhist monk practicing asceticism. In fact, Fahai had another plan in his heart. Only after seeing the abilities of young Jian and the great sage did he realize that his cultivation was far from sufficient. Moreover, he had no confidence in himself. Although young Jian could not see his details, if he really went to the West like this, he would inevitably show his ponytail in front of the Buddha. For today's plan, it was a slightly slower journey of 108,000 miles. When Tang Sanzang was traveling, he told His Majesty Tang that he would be back in 3 years. Now it seems that he has not traveled far and is unaware of the rugged and difficult road, which is why he miscalculated. According to Buddhist scriptures, the journey of Sanzang to the west took 14 years, which means that I had plenty of time to practice along the way. Fahai secretly pondered in his heart for a while. If he were to restore all his mana, he would only need more than a month. Although his previous life's mana was not bad, compared to these immortal beings, it was still quite different. Due to the lack of comparison, Fahai was momentarily unaware of his level of cultivation and power among these heavenly gods and Buddhas. Fortunately, when the relic was crushed, it was not completely wasted. There was also a fusion of mystery and divine soul. If it could be connected, one's own cultivation could be further improved. After all, it is a Buddhist relic that proves that one possesses the posture of becoming a Buddha. If we exaggerate it further, we can even say that one already has the foundation of a true Buddha. Although I haven't really taken that step, I have already seen its scenery. In the past 20 years, Fahai has had the power of Arhat, and now it has gained the lifelong Buddhist perception of Master Sanzang. With the essence of Buddhist relics that can be contained in the spirit, Fahai can only feel his own path of cultivation, which is a smooth road, and can't see the bottleneck. Master, be careful. The master and disciple chatted while rushing on their way, only to see the great sage give a light shout and actually copy the golden cudgel in his hand. With the help of Fahai Shiwei, they didn't see his movements clearly, let alone where his iron rod had been hidden before. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. My old son Wei's name fails to protect. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. My old son Wei's name fails to protect. Roar. With a roar in the forest, another white-haired tiger pounced towards Master Sanzang. Fahai looked interesting and seemed to be in conflict with tigers. How many tigers did he meet along the way? Just a mountain tiger. Fahai naturally didn't take it to heart, and besides, the great sage was completely naked at this moment, lacking all his clothes. With a stick in hand, it hit the big tiger's forehead, causing his brain to burst with peach blossoms. His teeth sprayed a few jade blocks, and he suddenly died. The great sage got off to a good start and said with a smile, I haven't used this treasure for 500 years. I didn't expect to use you for fasting today. The great sage looked up at his master again and saw that his expression was calm, without any panic. He said, Master is often a sharp person, so showing off like this is not enough. I'm afraid he won't be able to catch his eye. Moreover, with Master's magical power, this mountain tiger could not have harmed him. I'm afraid that my master may find me too murderous and not like a compassionate figure in a shaman. This tiger is also doomed. Wukong, you can peel off its tiger skin and make a dress for it. I will help it overcome one or two obstacles. The great sage was suddenly shocked. Is Master the same person? The great sage couldn't help but sigh as he thought of a meal he had intentionally let go of before. Master is truly a high monk, very different from those who seek fame and reputation, and have superficial appearances. The great sage was overjoyed in his heart and pulled out a monkey hair to transform into a sharp knife. He went to peel the tiger skin, but his mouth didn't stop. Master, it's getting late. When the disciples peel off the tiger skin, we need to hurry up and see that there seems to be cooking smoke at the foot of the mountain. I happen to go to melt my food and rest. I also borrowed some needles and thread to sew this tiger skin randomly. As he spoke, the great sage had already peeled off the tiger skin, took a knife, and cut it into 2 pieces. Put away one piece, wrap it around your waist, and grab a kudzu vine by the roadside, tightly tie it up and cover your lower body. That's good. Fahai nodded in agreement. He had a lot of insights in Japan today and was about to digest it well. Along the way, the great sage presented his origins like a treasure, blurting out his thoughts. With a stroke of the sea god needle iron rui, it truly made Fahai open his eyes and couldn't help but praise him a few times, but it made the great sage even more furious. He flipped several somersaults before finally refusing to stop. Master, my grandson's cultivation is unparalleled. Apart from Yang Erlang, he is a rare opponent in the 3 realms. He has the ability to subdue dragons and tigers, as well as the divine ability to stir rivers and seas. He discerns colors based on appearance and listens to reason. He measures the universe in large cases and captures the slightest hair in small cases. The changes are inexplicable and hidden. The great sage is delighted by his appearance, and his thoughts are all written on his face. At this moment, it's like a proud rooster waiting for master's praise. Seemingly clever, but afraid to be entirely monkey-like. In fact, they are a simple and straightforward person. After thinking for a moment, Fahai didn't help his authority and asked in reverse, since that's the case, how did you get caught by the Buddha? You were pinned down at the foot of the 5 Elements mountain. Master, you're the same old man who doesn't open a teapot. The great sage's face flattened, obviously poked to the pain, and he said loudly, then the Tathagata tricked me with a trick. I didn't notice his divine power for a moment. If I really threw my arms away and fought in a battle, I wouldn't have lost so badly. Oh. Fahai became interested and said, so, do you also consider yourself not a match for the Buddha? The original intention of the great sage was to show off his abilities. If he were an ordinary monk, he would not naturally expose his shortcomings. He could easily handle them with just a few random words. Now that he knew that the elder was capable and had a good relationship, he couldn't help but say a few heartfelt words. Although my grandson underestimated them, they shouldn't have played monkey like that. To be honest with my master, for the past 500 years, my disciples have also pondered some ways at the foot of the mountain. Although my disciples seem to have caused a great disturbance in the heavenly palace and had a great reputation, in reality, the immortals who did not even enter the gate of the Lingshao treasure hall were often reluctant to fight against my grandson. Hey, the only true force was a little Neza. Back then, when I was stopped by Wang Lingguan outside the Lingshao treasure hall, old Sun couldn't even defeat him for a while. Several true lords under Ziwei Emperor had not yet taken action. The 9 heavens Ingyuan thunder god Pu Hua Tian Zun also didn't show up, only 30.6 thunder generals in his mansion appeared, and I couldn't escape. They only said that 30.6 thunder generals couldn't hold on to old Sunday. Now, thinking about it, it's clear that I have already taken control of old Sun and taught him not to escape, only waiting for the Buddha to come and pick up someone. Wukong suddenly sighed and exclaimed, during these days of being trapped at the foot of the mountain, his disciples were occasionally calculating. According to the Tathagata, the Jade Emperor had endured 1750 tribulations, each lasting 129,600 years. What kind of Taoist practice is this? Although my grandson did not see him take action, after thinking about it, he realized that his magical powers and abilities were not inferior to those of the Tathagata. Otherwise, how could he govern the 3 realms? That's all, but I have traveled thousands of miles to invite the Buddha to pick me up. Now that I see my master, I know the difference. Let's hear what you have to say. I have fulfilled the master-disciple relationship between my disciples and my master. Perhaps Buddha had known 500 years ago that a scripture collector was passing by this place today, so he went to the heavenly court to pick up my grandson. He held me here and waited for my master to rescue me, and together we went to the west to retrieve the scriptures, achieving a positive result. Upon hearing the words of the great sage, Fahai was even more amazed. He couldn't believe that he still had a delicate heart. Seeing this layer made Fahai feel even more like a show going west, devoid of nourishment. There is another thing that the great sage did not mention. In the past 500 years, there were not only one master who took the scriptures, but also all of them. This is why he could easily recognize his master as the one taking the scriptures at a glance. These scripture seekers are all reincarnated by their master alone. The only difference is that those who obtain scriptures in the front are ordinary monks with no binding power, while if the master's skills are not truly mastered, the great sage would not dare to make arbitrary judgments. Roughly speaking, an ordinary demon under 1,000 years of cultivation may not be a match for his master. Even those inexperienced eternal demon kings, without powerful magical powers, may not be able to get any benefits. Could it be that the Tathagata was afraid that ordinary monks would not be able to subdue me, so he waited until this elder's cultivation was successful before releasing me? Just because this thought flashed by, Wukong suddenly vented his anger and felt a loss of trust. Now that he is out of trouble, there is actually no restraint for the great sage. Although he has a sharp tongue, he also asks himself a promise. Since he promised Bodhisattva to protect Tang Sanzang from the West to obtain scriptures, he naturally won't break his promise easily. Wukong's expression changed entirely on his face. Seeing his bald demeanor, Fahai could no longer feel the joy and arrogance he had when he first fell asleep. He could also guess a part of his thoughts and said, "If you are struggling in your heart, why don't you take note for now? When you go to Lingshan, you will face the Buddha for advice. I think the Buddhas of Lingshan don't like me, the monkey, and refuse to tell the truth." Fahai saw the great sage in a low voice and spoke loudly, "As a teacher, I feel free to stand by and support you. Let's see who dares to bully you." Coincidentally, as a teacher, I also have many doubts in my heart. When that time comes, you, my master, and my disciple will ask together, and let's see what kind of teachings the Buddha has. Master, you are my disciple. Upon hearing this, Wukong was momentarily moved and even wept with some words. When the heavenly palace was in turmoil, the world was at odds, and no sworn brothers helped each other. He was pinned down at the foot of the Five Elements mountain, and no one came to take care of him. Now that he has only worshipped a new master, he is willing to speak for himself in front of the Buddhas on the Spirit Mountain. He, the grand saint of the world, how do you behave like a daughter? Fahai saw Wukong twisting his appearance at this moment and deliberately provoked him, saying, "When we see Erlang Jinjuan again, we need to share this scene with him." Master, no way. Wukong exclaimed, "My old son Wei's name is not guaranteed. If young Erlang knew about this scene, he would rather escape from the three realms and never come back." End of this chapter. Take a good look at chapter 8, I will only teach you this time you are listening at novelfull.audio. Take a good look at chapter 8, I will only teach you this time both sides had originally met for the first time, and Wukong was more grateful than respected toward Sanzang. Now that the master and disciple have almost had a heart-to-heart conversation, it has also made the great sage feel at home. The Buddhas of Lingshan simply regard him as a monkey, and even if Guanyin Bodhisattva guides them out of difficulties, they are mostly in a state of generosity. Although they are somewhat close, they are not pure. On the contrary, Master is genuinely concerned at this moment, and his words are quite heroic, hitting the heart of the great sage. Although he was the great sage of Qi Tian who caused a great disturbance in the heavenly palace 500 years ago, he will eventually achieve the ultimate goal of defeating the Buddha. Now it seems that he is just a monkey without anyone to care for. With such divine abilities, I need to guide him on the right path. If I become obsessed with one thought, wouldn't I just follow in the footsteps of a poor monk? The infatuation of the poor monk has already led to a tragedy in the world. If this great sage misreads, it may be a catastrophe in the three realms. Although he has been inspired by Guanyin Bodhisattva and worshipped by me now, he is ultimately a rebellious character. 500 years of tempering have truly worn away his ferocity. It's just consistent suppression, not a good strategy. Through my own personal experience, I realized that blocking is better than dredging. Moreover, the great sage is capable of cultivating and defeating the Buddha through struggle, both in terms of innate talent and fundamental nature, which are quite profound. This great sage is a kind-hearted person. As long as he truly interacts, he can naturally exchange his sincerity for sincerity. After this experience, both the master and the disciple felt a little closer. Wukong's eyes were sharp and he pointed at the foot of the mountain, saying, "Master, you see, here we are. There is a family in front of us. It seems that they are old acquaintances of my grandson." Speaking quickly, he walked to the gate of the courtyard. "Wukong, wait a little longer, don't disturb others." Upon hearing this, the great sage paused and said, "It doesn't matter, it doesn't matter. This old man from this family should have fed me wild fruits on the Five Elements mountain when he was young, and he has seen the appearance of my grandson." As the words fell, he jumped over the wooden fence and entered the courtyard. "Wukong." Fahai simply called his name, but with a slight accent. De Xingxian smiled and restrained himself a bit before jumping out and waving inside, shouting, old man, come and open the door. Here we go, here we go. In the yard, a little doll slowly walked to the door with an old man with white beard and hair, or with the great sage's back facing the two of them. The old man and the little doll didn't see the great sage's appearance, so there was nothing strange about them. When they approached, the mage was in front of them, covering the great sage back a bit. The old man even greeted the mage with a smile and said, "Are you?" Fahai has always been a polite monk. Just as he was about to introduce himself, he saw the great sage rushing forward and putting a monkey face in front of him. "Old man, we are." "Ouch. Grandpa." The old man stumbled backwards with a frightened expression on his face. Although the little doll was also frightened and trembling all over, she always supported her grandfather and refused to let go, which prevented the old man from falling. Fahai felt quite helpless in his heart. This monkey acted recklessly and had always acted his own way, which was indeed difficult to restrain. However, on the other hand, if he were to restrain his nature, he would not be the great sage of Qi Tian. Fahai stopped Wukong and said with a smile, "Don't be afraid, old man. I am a monk from the Eastern Tang dynasty who went to the Western heaven to obtain scriptures. This is my disciple with great powers, but he is not a villain either." "Who is this person? Where did they come from?" The old man was quite old, perhaps a bit deaf, and he didn't listen attentively, or he was afraid he might have misheard, so he asked again. "It was a monk from the Eastern Tang dynasty who went to the Western heaven to worship Buddha and seek scriptures." Oh, from the Tang dynasty." Fahai still had some patience, but the great sage couldn't bear it anymore and pushed forward, saying, "Old man, we're here to stay overnight." He wanted to say something more, but the old man had already sent his grandson to open the door and blocked the words of the great sage. The grandson opened the door, and the old man welcomed the wizard in. The sage, whose words were suppressed, had no choice but to go and lead the horse. In fact, this horse was actually a change in his hair, which was in line with his heart. However, if he stood still at this moment, he looked a bit dazed, so he casually took a hand. Before taking a few steps, I heard the old man choreographing himself. "Elder, you seem like a Tang dynasty person, but he..." As soon as these words came out, the great sage couldn't hold back any longer. He released the reins and jumped forward, saying one action at a time, "I don't look like that. You old man is so pale. I am the great sage of Qi Tian, who rebelled against the heavenly palace 500 years ago and has been pinned down at the foot of the Five Elements mountain. When you were a child, you went up the mountain to chop firewood. I have seen you before." Upon hearing this, the old man's memories of the past appeared one by one. Upon closer observation of the appearance of the great sage, he immediately smiled happily and said, "Oh, yes. I was young at that time and even fed you a few wild fruits." The great sage smiled proudly and showed off to his master, "Master, I said I'm an old acquaintance, but I haven't seen him for a long time, but he doesn't recognize me anymore. The divine monkey has been trapped at the foot of the mountain for a long time, and now it has been rescued from the disaster. Congratulations. Congratulations, the great sage followed suit. The old man invited his master and apprentice into the house, but the old man's family was not actually wealthy. Although entertaining the two was a simple meal, it was a luxury that the family had not seen in a long time. Although fate is also a practice in Buddhism, Fahai has never been a freeloader. Seeing that his grandson is well behaved and clever, he passed down a set of methods to strengthen his body, which is actually even better. However, he is afraid that his family background may not be able to withstand the necessary energy, blood, and nutrition in the future, which may be harmful and not beneficial. As for Buddhism, it has not been taught at all. This doll seems to be the only child of the old man's family, waiting for him to pass on the family line. If, due to some of his own words, this doll is allowed to become a Buddhist monk in the future, wouldn't it just cut off the family's incense? This is not merit. After the meal, I had some casual conversations, inevitably talking about the past when the great sage was suppressed at the foot of the mountain and met the old man when he was young. For a moment it was also enjoyable. Unconsciously late at night, the old man and his grandson went to rest on their own. Fahai and the great sage lived in the same room. The great sage took out tiger skin and prepared to sew a piece of clothing with borrowed needles and thread, but they were completely shapeless. Fahai took it from the hands of the great sage and said, "Let me be your teacher." The great sage saw that Fahai's every stitch was quite exquisite, and couldn't help but say, "I didn't expect master to understand these delicate tasks. The clothes of the poor monk are all sewn by hand. However, this is the first time they have been made for someone else." This statement is not false. Whether it's Fahai or Sanzang, all the clothes on their bodies are sewn by themselves. Upon hearing this, the great sage was immediately in high spirits. He was about to express his gratitude, but he felt embarrassed. While he was in a difficult situation, he heard his master say, "You see, I will only teach you this time." Fahai's tone was serious, but it startled the great sage. He felt a slight pain behind his head and immediately sat upright, not daring to act recklessly. Combining the craftsmanship of two masters, Fahai and Sanzang, the finished product goes without saying much. The great sage couldn't bear to take it off and was overjoyed to receive it. At this moment, Fahai suddenly moved his ears and frowned slightly. Wukong quickly asked, "Master, is there anything urgent?" Two guests seemed to have arrived outside the door. Guest. Wukong was stunned for a moment and instinctively said, "It's only this old man's family in a few miles radius. What kind of guests will come to visit at this time?" The great sage sniffed his nose and said, "But I haven't smelled any demon either." "Master, wait a moment, let my grandson go out and take a look. P.S. New book on the road, seeking to follow up on reading, end of this chapter. What should you do if you hurt a good person by mistake? You are listening at novelfull.audio. What should you do if you hurt a good person by mistake? The great sage goes out quickly, and Fahai's footsteps are not slow either. As soon as the two of them came out, they saw several steel knives shining coldly in the moonlight. It turned out that strong men were catching knives to rob homes, and their eyes scanned to see three people. One person had already touched the front of the house of the grandparents and grandchildren, and Wukong was furious. He took out the golden cudgel from his ear and hit it with the cudgel. Fahai spoke on the side and said, "Wukong, leave your mouth alive." Upon hearing these words, Wukong had already exhausted his strength, but he did not expect these bandits to be easily defeated. The golden hoop stick only gave a slight bump and he died. Amitabha Buddha. A one-eyed bandit wearing an eye mask, seeing the ferocity of the great sage, snatched his horse and left. The other saw that he couldn't run away and looked at Fahai as if he was a weak monk. He thought that holding on to him was holding on to the hostage, so he drew a knife and approached. "Master, be careful." The great sage wanted to pursue him, but he saw his master in danger. As he was struggling, he heard his master's voice say, "You go pursue that horse thief, and let's see where their lair is." Upon hearing the sound, it was evident that the thief's knife had reached his master's hands at some point, and the thief was now kneeling on the ground with the knife resting on his neck. "What a mortal monk!" Wukong Xian said, "But I forgot my master's ability. What should a few thieves do?" Then he did a somersault and followed behind the bandit. In fact, the horse was already a monkey-haired transformation. Even if Wukong didn't go this trip with him personally, he only needed the one-eyed bandit to ride back, and he could naturally know the other's lair. Thinking so, he saw a white light flashing not far ahead. Then he cut off contact with the horse. "Hush!" The great sage turned his eyes, shining with golden light, and upon closer inspection, it turned out to be a white dragon. A few thieves are not a big deal, and besides, Master has already captured one. However, if this wild dragon is ferocious, it still depends on Master's safety. The great sage threw a stick at the white dragon's head, and the white dragon saw that the iron rod was strong and heavy, knowing that it was powerless against the enemy, and turned away. The great sage was about to catch up quickly when he saw something falling from under the white dragon, which was a delicate and translucent jade pendant. With the great sage's eyesight, he could easily see that it was not an ordinary object. The white dragon was probably not a wild dragon, and he didn't know exactly what it was. The great sage flew up to the clouds and saw the white dragon flying into a water stream. There was a stone tablet on the edge of the cliff that read Eagle Cho Jian. He remembered the white dragon's lair in his heart, turned the cloud path, and returned to the old man's home. Just now, there was quite a commotion, and both the old man and his grandson were awakened by a startle. When Wukong returned, he saw the robber crying bitterly and kneeling in front of his master's seat, confessing his sinful life, tears streaming down his face, which was shocking. What exactly happened? Amitabha Buddha. Upon seeing the great sage return, Fahai recited the Buddhist name, "What have you found?" The great sage didn't wait for his master to inquire in detail before recounting what had just happened. My grandson saw that the white dragon was not ordinary, so he first explored his whereabouts. As for the nest of those bandits, his disciples had not found it. The great sage glanced at his master, as if afraid of being punished. Fahai naturally wouldn't blame Wukong, but instead looked at the bandit kneeling on the ground and said, "So, I'll have you lead the way later." The robber kowtowed a few times on the ground and said, "I have committed a serious crime. Fortunately, I met a monk and realized that I have made mistakes in my life. Now I am about to forgive you." Wait a moment, Fahai held down the robber and looked at the great sage, Wukong. The disciple is here. The bandit who was killed by you, as my teacher, was about to transcend it. As the saying goes, the lamp of death is extinguished. Even though he was a great thief in the Yangtze River and his hands were stained with several lives, today he will ultimately die in your hands. Dig a pit later and bury his body, don't expose it to your father-in-law's house. When Master de Xingjian mentioned the bandit he had killed, he thought it was due to the compassion of people in Buddhism and wanted to blame himself for killing people indiscriminately. After all, humans and tigers are different. Master doesn't blame himself for killing the evil tiger, but he may not be able to tolerate himself for committing murder. However, he didn't expect Master to speak in such a way, and couldn't help but wonder, "Master, don't you blame my grandson for killing him? I often hear that people in Buddhism would rather die than kill themselves." Although disciples are on their way to becoming monks, they never expected that they have no weight in their hands. Now they have beaten them to death with a stick. Isn't it killing? They have already violated the precepts. In life, who can avoid making mistakes? A trace of nostalgia flashed in Fahai's eyes, but he quickly restrained himself. Although Wukong's attack was heavier and he committed the crime of murder, in Fahai's eyes, it was not considered a mistake. Wrong is wrong, discipline is discipline. Sometimes wrong does not necessarily violate discipline, sometimes, following the rules does not necessarily mean it is correct. This is the insight gained by Fahai through his personal experience. If it weren't for you and me staying here today, wouldn't our father-in-law, grandfather, and grandson have died innocently? Do you mean that you have all the skills, and because you are afraid of committing murder, you watch bandits kill good people? Fahai didn't want a person like the great sage of Chi Tian to be bound by the rules and regulations of Buddhism. He used to be trapped in it, but his eyes were blinded. Now that he wants to step out himself, how could he push son Wukong into it? Wukong looked at the bandit kneeling in front of his master to repent, and then at the bandit who had been beaten to death by his own stick. He always felt that something was not quite right, but for a while, he couldn't tell. Fahai saw Wukong scratching his ears and cheeks, knowing that he had listened to his words. He smiled and said, "You killed him to eliminate harm for the people, and he died a more innocent life, so as not to harm others again in the future. If he really gave them a way of life with the heart of a bodhisattva, what would happen if there were still good families who died at their hands in the future? Will they plead justice to Yan Jun in the underworld, saying that we only care about the lives of bandits, but we don't care if good people will suffer? And who should this killing be on? These words left the great sage stunned. Master truly deserves to be a prominent monk of the Tang dynasty. As I sighed, I also secretly pondered some truth in my heart. It's okay if you haven't encountered them, but since you have encountered them, if you don't kill these bandits, the crime of bandits harming others in the future should be on yourself. The great sage was digesting when his master's voice came in his ear. But there's one more thing, you need to pay attention. Wukong curiously said, what's going on? Although you made a mistake today, it's not a mistake to kill. But if one day you hurt a good person by mistake, what should you do? Ah, this. Wukong lost his mind for a moment, and a scene of himself accidentally killing a good person came to mind, making him shiver and feel uncomfortable all over. He couldn't figure it out on his own, so he quickly asked his master for advice. Please ask the master to help his disciples clarify. Although you are a stubborn monkey, as a teacher, you are naturally jealous of evil as if you were an enemy. This is a good quality, coupled with your ability to penetrate heaven and earth. It is like adding wings to a tiger, but you have always lacked a constraint. But now that you know that you do not judge the severity of your actions, why don't you think of a way to restrain yourself? It can also be considered a cultivation. The great sage felt a bit embarrassed and said, Master, I don't know. When I was learning martial arts before, my mentor didn't seriously guide me. My grandson's martial arts were all self-taught, which can be said to be natural. He also borrowed a lot from his senior brothers, so it was still a bit messy. In fact, without a system, my grandson couldn't come up with any rules for the time being. I wonder if Master has any good methods. Fahai thought for a moment and said, when I walked through the world, I heard that there may be a realm of lifting heavy as light or lifting light as heavy in ordinary martial arts. As a teacher, your stick technique is always strong and fierce. Although you are brave enough to move forward, you have also lost your strength. You said that your golden hoop stick weighs 13,500 pounds, and can be large or small, and the changes are satisfactory. Would you like to think about it in this regard? Light. Heavy. The saying goes, one method can connect all kinds of methods. If you can truly use your energy to send and receive it from your heart, then you don't have to worry about accidentally hurting a good person's life in the future. Fahai saw the great sage listening attentively and smiled. If you really understand the changes in yin and yang, hardness and softness, perhaps one day when you compete with Erlang Jinjuan, you have a good chance of winning. Wukong's eyes lit up as if he had obtained a precious treasure. Bang Bang and Bang Bang nodded and said, thank you, disciple, for your guidance. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Difficult to change nature. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. Difficult to change nature. In the past, the great sage held the throne at the foot of the flower and fruit mountain, and his hands were stained with countless lives. He thought that he would be strictly controlled after joining the Sha men after worshipping his master, but he never expected that his master's words would be deafening and make him let go of many worries. His original intention was to endure for 3 to 5 years, protect him, and then go his separate ways. After obtaining the scriptures, the great sage looked at this new master with increasing admiration, and he felt even more admiration in his heart. The master's words were reasonable, and he naturally was willing to listen to them, even feeling that he didn't hear enough. I am pondering the changes in the realm of lifting weights lightly and lifting weights lightly in my heart, and the voice of my master can be heard in my ear. Please take note of this French scripture with your heart. If you harm such a murderer again in the future, this scripture will be able to transcend him like this, and it will not be considered a crime of murder. Upon hearing this, the great sage was stunned again. What French is it? Does transcendence not count as committing murder? Does Buddhism really have this statement? Listen carefully, I will only recite it once, Fahai said slightly as he saw the great sage's trance. Fahai opened his mouth to express the profound sound of the great Buddha, weaving obscure notes into an ancient and simple truth. After only listening to a few words, the great sage grew 2 heads tall. He would rather ponder the changes in the lightness of his stick technique than learn the bird language. He wanted to ask if there was a Chinese version of this spell, but seeing his master's solemn expression when he overcame evil spirits, he dared not speak for a moment. I had to muster up my energy, fearing any mistakes or omissions. One is willing to teach, and the other is also diligent in learning. The relationship between master and disciple has become increasingly close, and the bond between master and disciple has emerged. This is an excellent picture. Guanyin Bodhisattva, who was hiding above the clouds, was very surprised to see this scene. What kind of temperament does this monkey head have? It goes without saying that he is known for his reckless behavior in the 3 realms. Even if he had been suppressed under the 5 elements mountain for 500 or 600 years, it may not have worn away his temperament. How could he willingly be bound again once he was lifted out of poverty? A demon saint who is skilled at killing creatures meets a compassionate monk, and the conflict between the two is originally irreconcilable. 2 completely different ways of dealing with things require conflict and collision, which is essential. But what kind of scene is this now? The great sage who respects teachers and values the way is listening to teachings. Indeed, it caught the Bodhisattva off guard. So much so that the arrangements she had prepared in advance for this disaster seemed to be useless. According to the script, Wukong would kill several bandits and suffer from Tang Sanzang's criticism and resentment, which led to a rift between the master and disciple. According to the temperament of the monkey, how can it tolerate such nagging? Even if we don't break our promise and don't go to the west, it's reasonable to be provoked by words and go out to hide and be pure. In this way, she can take advantage of the situation and send the 3 hoops to Tang monk. Just coax the monkey to bring them, which is the method of Sanzang's discipline to restrain the monkey. In fact, she should not be here at the moment, but when Arhat, who was detained in the 5 elements mountain, returned to Lingshan to pay the stickers, she talked about some of the oddities of Tang Sanzang, so Guanyin Bodhisattva sat down to observe in advance. At first glance, it almost caused this grand Guanyin Bodhisattva to lose his composure and lose his composure. She said she came early, but it was actually a bit late. However, she happened to hear the conversation between Sanzang and Wukong. During this time, she wanted to refute Sanzang's false words, but ultimately did not appear. It is not appropriate to appear at this moment to debate Buddhism with the 3 Tripitaka. There is no fixed number in Buddhist debate, and at this moment, Sun Wukong may be more willing to believe what Sanzang said. Not to mention Sun Wukong, even the Bodhisattva himself does not believe that what Sanzang master said is unreasonable. Guanyin Bodhisattva's teachings are complex. Before becoming one of the 3 great masters in Buddhism, she was also a disciple of the Taoist sect, and could be said to be the head of both families. This is also why she did not hold a Buddha position, but held a high position in the Lingshan mountains. If she guessed correctly, these 3 musketeers may have awakened the true spirit of the golden cicada. The words he said to Sun Wukong just now are the same as his theory of hating the various Buddhas of Lingshan. Jinshan is a disciple of the Buddha, and coincidentally, the Buddha was the first disciple to renounce Buddhism at that time. His cultivation in both Buddhism and Taoism is even more profound. As his own disciple, Jinshan, although practicing Buddhism and Taoism, must also have some experience in Taoism. The way of balancing yin and yang is one of the core elements of Taoism. The reason why Guanyin Bodhisattva speculated that it was the awakening of the golden cicada is also because she recently personally selected the person to take the scriptures in Chang'an. She was very clear about what Tang Sanzang looked like before and could never say such words. I just didn't expect that the 10th reincarnation of the golden cicada child would still remain unchanged in nature. At this point, we can't change the person who took the scriptures, can we? The Bodhisattva felt worried in his heart. If the person who took the scriptures changed, wouldn't this monkey also have to change? The whole body is affected by pulling one hair, which is quite tricky and requires long-term consideration. It should have been a good thing for the master and disciple to get along well, but unfortunately, Jinshan is a rebellious person, and is vastly different from Tang Sanzang. The Buddhist sect wants to take Sun Wukong as a Buddhist protector, but they don't want him to make a big fuss over the spirit mountain after causing trouble in the heavenly palace. Therefore, in response to Sun Wukong's temperament, many targeted arrangements were made in advance, in order to completely erase his stubbornness and ferocity, and to thoroughly immerse him in Buddhism. In the future, he will become an obedient warrior to defeat the Buddha, rather than a reckless sage. Buddhism spreads to the east and flourishes in the west. The reincarnation of Jinshan and Sun Wukong are both key figures among them. According to the Lingshan High Rise deduction, the westward journey has a total of 81 difficulties, all of which have been carefully planned. I never expected that Tang Sanzang would make such a mistake just as he emerged from the Tang dynasty. Moreover, the curtain of the journey to the west has already opened, and the Buddhist sect is playing against various forces and reaching many agreements. Even if the Buddhist sect wants to renege and start over at this moment, it is afraid that other families will not agree. Think about Lao Jun's Huahua elixir. He was afraid that this monkey elixir would not be refined after eating too much, so he went back to the furnace. But this monkey kicked over Lao Jun's alchemy furnace with one kick, and the furnace fell into the mortal world, transforming into a flame mountain. These accounts are well remembered by people and will be repaid in the future. It is said that when upright Wang Mang usurped the Han dynasty, Lu Xiu rebelled and some flying fires hit Wang Mang's army. After pondering for a moment, the Bodhisattva couldn't come up with a good solution. Now, let's take a closer look. As the executive director and screenwriter of The Journey to the West, I still have to start from the overall situation. As long as Tang Sanzang successfully reaches the western heaven, obtains the true scriptures, and spreads them to the eastern land, the process seems not to be that important. As for how to deal with the awakening of the golden cicada child's true spirit, Guanyin Bodhisattva is not good at making conclusions. First, deal with the current situation, and then return to Lingshan to report to the Buddha before making a decision. When the Bodhisattva was in trouble, Fahai had already transcended the evil spirit of the bandit. Can you take note of it? Wukong's intelligence is extremely high. At this moment, he remembers it with all his heart and cannot forget it. He nodded repeatedly and said, "Master, I have recorded everything. Go find a secluded place and bury his body." "Master, wait a moment, my grandson will come over." Wukong carried the body and flipped it over without a trace. After about half a pillar of incense, he had already returned. Fahai stood up and lifted the robber away, saying, "It's your turn to lead the way." "Hey, master, come with the villain." The robber nodded repeatedly and transformed into a leader. "Wukong, you stay here and watch to prevent criminals from seeking revenge from other sources. As a teacher, you can go on your own." Wukong saw his master going out to seek pleasure, but he didn't bring himself. His venomous tongue and foul-mouthed nature suddenly erupted, saying, "Master, you ordinary monk with no binding power. How can you go to the bandit's lair alone? It's better to take my grandson with you." End of this chapter.